Unlock the magics of the book. They are more than an ink on the paper, they are the gateway on the new world, fresh knowledge, and the personal growth. Dive in, explore freely, and let your imagination roam. Big congratulations on the seventh episode of the Bibliothek. This episode opened up a wonderful opportunity to connect with the authors, explore the inspiration behind their work, and gain a meaningful insight into the craft of writing. And of course, I will be sharing a thoughtful feedback on the book content and its unique value proposition to make the conversation even richer. Rob, Randy, thank you for joining me. Your book, The GitHub Copilot Handbook, comes at a perfect time when engineering teams everywhere are wrestling with how to integrate AI meaningfully into the real development workflow. Not just a novelty, but a force multiplier. What I really appreciate is that your book does not just talk about Copilot as a coding assistant, your approach it as a catalyst for change across the entire software development lifecycle. You highlight how Copilot reduces frictions in everyday development, turning into the task or automating repetitive works, improving reviews, identify issues earlier, and building confidence in delivery. But equally important, the book also addresses the human side, onboarding, guardrails, learning curves, and building an internal community so adaptation sticks. Having meticulously reviewed all approximately 290 pages, I can attest to the attention grabbing content within. The moment we have been waiting for has arrived. Let's extend a warm welcome to Rob and Randy to give him the floor to introduce himself. Rob, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Mesh. My name is Rob. I'm based in the Netherlands, and I still call myself a DevOps consultant and GitHub trainer. So I tend to give tons and tons of training on the GitHub platform, and of course that includes GitHub Copilot. And I've been doing this from the viewpoint of really being a DevOps engineer myself as well. So how can we really help people forward with tools like this that we now have available as well? Randy, over to you.
Yep. Hi, I'm Randy. I'm based out of north of Detroit, Michigan. I am a principal trainer at Zebia. I've been here about 2.5 years, going on 3 or so, and I focus a lot on training, building content, working with Microsoft and GitHub on these type of programs. So GitHub Copilot, Advanced Security are some of my specialties, and I spend a ton of time, like Rob, on helping teams with AI-assisted tooling and hands-on demos and practical workflows, and helping them get real value out of the tools.
Thank you so much. So let's start with the first question here that what were your source of inspiration for this book, Randy?
So my whole career I've spent really building software. So and helping people with tools, helping developers to use the tools themselves in a very practical way. So after working again closely with Robin at Zebia, we've trained tens of thousands of different developers. We saw a pattern of how can we use GitHub Copilot to drive real value in their work and their day-to-day work. So that was what inspired us. And then, of course, talking with Rob about that, it was a great idea, thinking, hey, we should write a book on this. Not technical book, but more how to capture what actually works. That was my inspiration. Rob?
Yeah, that's basically how it came to be. You see a lot of these tools and podcasts and videos that are online. You see them focusing on a certain aspect of GitHub Copilot. How can we do this better or faster or cheaper with the tools that we have at hand? And we were sort of embraced by that, saying, hey, this is not the way that you should be teaching people the way to use GitHub Copilot by itself, because it is so much more than just focusing on how do you make better unit testing, for example, with GitHub Copilot. So we said to each other, well, let's make this more agnostic and more from the viewpoint of these are some of the processes that you can let the tools loose at so that you get more value out of that without diving into really specific things. I've seen people asking for how do you build React applications with GitHub Copilot, and we tended to stay away as much as possible from that because, as I said, this is already very agnostic. It's way broader than just that. So in the book as well, we talk about the whole SDLC, basically, the software delivery lifecycle of starting with ideation. This is how you do system requirements engineering, for example, really starting with what are we going to implement. Then there's a piece of it that actually talks about code, but then there's also so much more of How do you actually maintain it? How do you make it something that you can deliver and things from that? And that is the thing that we've seen over the years in the trainings that we give for GitHub Copilot as well. The more you explain this to people as this is a tool that can help you do certain things, and this is the way you need to think about using the tool, instead of going really deep into a specific topic, the more value that you see getting out of the tools as well. So that's really where it all started. We've been doing this for a while. How can we do this in a very good whole sort of a storyline flow in the book as well?
Fantastic. And in that case, could you describe your writing process for the book?
What we first did is really make a high over table of contents of this is what we want to translate over to people. This is the journey that we want to take. And that is where we really immediately had the connection of, okay, we need to definitely show some of the tools. Yes, lives inside an IDE, for example. Yes, you can do certain things on github.com, but there's so much more. And eventually we even said, well, we're not going to focus too much on every single command that is there in the IDE, for example, because also be realistic, those things are changing every single week, it seems. So that is not something that you can capture in the book. So it's more good of an idea to show off, this is where stuff lives. This is what you do inside of the editor, for example. You have suggestions while you're typing. You have the chat interface, which is a different interface for different tasks, for example. And then you grow slowly over time into things like agentic mode and things like that. So that was the discussion we had internally of what do we actually want to see. And I think we have 3 or 4 chapters in the middle of the book describing specific functionalities, both in the IDE, for example. We touch upon the Copilot CLI, and we touch upon coding agent on the web, for example. And then the rest of the book is more of that whole storyline around the SDLC. So we even start at the beginning on purpose. That is something we had a discussion on internally as well. And we said, this is how we want to get started with it. For example, chapter 1 is briefly just gradually introducing this is GitHub Copilot, and this is the breadth of the things that we're talking about. Chapter 2 is on purpose. What the heck is Gen AI? In essence, what is in there? Because we see from our trainings, for example, that a lot of people skip over that, and then they expect basically magic to happen from these large language models that we see everywhere. And especially this is a tool for engineers. If you show them a little bit of what is happening behind the covers, that gives them much more understanding and realism of this is the things that the tools can do, but also the parts where it really isn't that great at. So getting that out of that. And that is basically how we started, making sure that we have a good storyline with explaining overall what it is, what Gen AI is, then showing the technical implications that are there. And then we take it forward with what we do in our trainings as well of, it doesn't stop when you know how Copilot works inside of your RDE. Then the learning journey basically starts, because now you need to start sharing that with other folks, because that is how we tend to learn as humans anyway. You learn by seeing other people doing certain things. And then you think, okay, this is something that I can apply in my own process as well. So that was overall how we started, just tossing ideas around of how do we want to structure the book in a sense that we can actually have a good storyline in there that matches our experience from being a trainer on this.
Rob summed it up. There's not much for me to add other than just kind of take a step back is the patterns we saw from all the training we've done. And when we discussed the chapters and the layout, and as Rob said, it's the journey. It's that crawl, walk, run type of a journey for the developers, engineers. But it's based on real world trainings and patterns we've seen out there from different customers. So yeah, I can't add much more than that. That was great. Thank you.
Perfect. And then let me just put you, Randy, in the tough situation that you have to tell me your favorite chapter from the book. I know it's kind of hard to choose one baby out of 3, but yeah, is there any favorite chapter from the book, and why you would emphasize that chapter more over the others?
Man, I might be biased on my favorite chapter. I'm going to have to call out chapter 7. Chapter 7 was my Everest. And chapter 7, thank God, Rob and I worked hard on that. Chapter 7 went a few rounds. Chapter 7 is all about MCP servers. That was, I think that is my favorite chapter. They're all great chapters. They're all our children, so it's hard to pick just one. But I think I would pick chapter 7. Final answer.
Anything from you, Rob? Do you have any favorite chapters?
Yeah, I'm sort of torn between chapter 2, which is really explaining what the heck Gen AI is, because that is there on purpose. And we have a chapter on using tools like GitHub Copilot is no longer about just focusing on developer productivity. It is changing the way that we as engineers work in our profession, and we can get so much more out of that. And that gets so murky when you start discussing productivity and things like that. And we have that as enterprise customers are usually the ones that pay for our trainings, for example. So we have that discussion happening all the time as well. And there's so much more that you can do. So that's one of the chapters that I really like as well, where we explained of this is not just about productivity. You can gain so much more from these tools.
April, who wrote the forward, any votes about her?
So April, yes, April's a great friend of ours, and she was just a perfect fit. She travels the world talking about developer productivity and developer tools. She's a GitHub developer advocate, and we just thought she was a perfect pick to write the forward for us on this this wonderful book. And she really put the fine-tuned polishing touches on it so as well.
Awesome. And maybe, Rob, if you would like to express the gratitude to Mickey, who is the reviewer for this book.
Yes, this book would not have happened in the way it has been without the help of Mickey Gousset. He's also at GitHub. He's also an long-time friend of ours. And he tends to help us out with any technical writing and things like that. It's always helpful if you have at least a technical understanding person that can help you with these things. And working with Mickey on these things is always so much fun because he tends to really read what is in the book. And then you get comments back of, sometimes it is, maybe you want to rewrite that, but most of the time is something like, I didn't know that you could do this with these tools. And that kind of feedback just really helps you getting into the motion of producing more content, of course, because there's definitely quite a lot of time where you're just writing down the next pages. And as you said, there's more than 260 of them. There's quite a lot of content in here.
Yeah. Thank you. And who is this intended audience for this book?
I would say the intended audience is going to be developers using this in practical ways, dev leads, engineers. It basically is, I'll say, folks on app dev teams that are looking for learning how to use AI assisted tooling, not from a technical standpoint, but from more of a holistic standpoint.
And even all the people around that process as well, right? The management part that is there when we talk about community, the people even from HR that need to think about how do we actually upskill people using these tools and making sure that they don't underestimate it. This is not a tool where you give somebody a license, point them to YouTube and say, hey, now you will be a 10x engineer next day. Yep. We really see this as a growth journey of people as well. I tend to say this took me at least 6 months to absorb myself, for example. And I live in this stuff every single day. So this is definitely quite a learning curve that you have there. So it's also for those kinds of people to understand. This is more than just handing out a book or some information on the topic itself.
Maybe, Rob, continuing from you, how much support you got it from your family?
Yeah, it's always the case when we do stuff like this, especially writing a book. You can't do this without a good backing of your family as well. That's what we had initially as well. I asked Randy, for example, hey, would you like to join and start writing this book with me together? I already squared it with my family, making sure that I had the support internally. And Randy had to do the same thing.
Yeah, I say I had to, my biggest backer, my wife, of course, backed me up through all the journey here. And again, we discussed it, like Rob said, ahead of time. So it was agreed upon that there'd be some nights, there'd be some long nights, some long weekends. I had a couple solo trips away that I, locked myself in my office for a while and spanned over a few weekends, but all supported. Absolutely. Can't happen without it.
No.
Awesome. So I'd like to just conclude it. In evaluating of this book, what's truly stand out for me in this book is the clarity and particularity which you have approached topic that many teams struggles to operationalize. You have taken something as a broad and potentially overwhelming as applying AI across the software development life cycles and turn into the structured, accessible, and highly actionable guide. I especially appreciate how the book does not just teach features, it teaches mindset, it teaches discipline, and it teaches the engineering craftsmanship as an AI augmented world. The balance between the conceptual understanding and the hands-on real-world patterns make it valuable for both the beginners and the seasoned professional. The way you both weave together planning, coding, debugging, testing, and the team collaboration show a deep understanding of what model engineering teams face every day. And it's rare to find a book that managed the technical, practical, and the inspirational at the same time. but this one succeeded into that one. And the most importantly, the book empowers readers. It's give them a confidence not only how to use the GitHub Copilot, but also how to transform their workflows, elevate team culture, and adopt AI responsibilities and the sustainability. So thank you again, Rob and Randy, for graciously sharing your time with me. A great shout to all of our viewers for their unwavering support. Remember to subscribe the channel, click the bell icon for the notification, and share the valuable content with your friends and the colleagues. Let's spread the knowledge and excitement. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we will be unveil the next book up for review. Until that, have a fantastic time and goodbye.